13.17. I stared at this one a little while, mainly the geometry around this boss. I kept wanting to make this a positive or an internal shape, but then it finally clicked that this is material that is being removed, and so that helped quite a bit. So one of the things we can do with this complexity is do a layout sketch and get in at least the majority of the dimensions, and then if we need to, also a layout sketch for the maybe the top plane, and that will give us enough information to start to decipher this what is it, drill press bracket. Alright, so I have loaded up the pre-release of 2019. So one of the things I would like you to get out of this is that there's not a whole lot of difference between 2018 and 2019. So File New, it brings over all my templates, and so let's go with the part inch, and we'll let it launch. Alright, and then in the front plane, we're not really given an origin, so we need to pick one. I think in the previous videos I said that I was going to go to the larger number. Well, the nominals are 1.5, 1.28, 0.75, so I think I'm going to reverse that and go with the smaller of the two numbers, just whichever one stays on fractional. A lot of the other ones were split dimensions, so we just kind of picked one. So looking at the geometry, 2 inches, 2.438, a radius, not really given the center point, but it comes off tangency and then it contacts at that point, and then we have the radius. One of the other things, the fillets and rounds of 0.124, because I'm going to make detailed drawings of this part to help with the build. I'm going to leave out the 1/8 inch radiuses, things like the 1/2 inch and then the 0.25. We'll still put those in there for effect, but we'll leave these edges sharp and maybe deal with them a little bit later. So not seeing anything else too crazy there. Alright, so we've opened up the sketch on the front plane. And so for the center, I'm just going to pick the left boss. Kind of that 588 jumps out. Alright, so 5.88 is an overall. And then between the two bosses is 6.5. Alright, and the height of the left boss is 2.5. Alright, and then let's see for our centers, and because this is just kind of scaffolding, the boss then on this side was 2 inches. I'm going to do the select and control select the endpoint and make that a midpoint, so that'll end up being a diameter when we're done. The left side is the 2.813. I was going to say the 438, so the 2 7/16, but actually we need the 2 13/16. 813. Alright, and then I'll make the comment real quick that as far as the CSWA Pro, this is a higher complexity. I'd almost say that this is a professional level complexity. So going through the process, though, being able to decipher the geometry, I think it still has that value. Alright, so I'm going to go with an arc between the points, so it comes off tangency and then is coming down to the intersection. So we'll go with a tangent arc and to the segment. Alright, Now that one picked up and it's 4.169. That was not what we were given, 4.938. So the assumption that this was tangent, probably not. Alright, so I'm going to leave that dimension temporarily, and we'll take the tangency off. And then that radius is still there, so I don't really need to reapply it. I can come over to other, uncheck the driven, and then let's see what it looks like with the 4.938. So it flattens it out just a little bit and isn't quite sharp. So the outside of the boss, we're going to have to do a little bit of a blend anyway. So I'm not overly concerned with that. Alright, and then we're going to have another vertical line. And so I got coincident and vertical. So I really don't want either one. I want the vertical, but I don't want the coincident. So I'm going to pull that away a little ways. And what I'm going for is the 1.188, 1 3/16 off the center line, back to that inside face. I'll go ahead and generate that. And even if it's a little too much geometry, it gives me the good starting point. So 1.188. Alright, coming across then on that intersection. Okay, so that comes back. Let's go ahead and put in the horizontal. So it has a size of, well, I guess, looking at those numbers, Control plus, I wanted to make sure that there was actually a 1 in there, because I saw the 1.88 and there wasn't a 1 in there. So the mixture of 3-place and 2-place decimals is kind of a little confusing sometimes. So 1.88. We're going to end up with the circular boss, so we have the 0.75 through. I'm going to put it in for reference. And off of that same center line then is the 1.28 to 1.283. So we need to pick one. Alright, so the 1.28, and then its vertical location. Have a diameter of 1.25, so not quite seeing that one. So radiuses, that radius blends and goes right to the base. All of a sudden we're making some assumptions, but if this circular rotates over, comes all the way around and ends up tangent, then that is one possible solution. The other thing is with the height of 0.63 and the radius is of 0.06 and the base, that should be 1.12. Alright, so I don't see anything confirming that, so that will be one of those questionable dimensions that I'm gonna make the call and until I find out different. Okay, so 1.12. So just a little bit of separation there. And we have the 1.25 and a radius of 1.5. So let's go ahead and put those in, because I'm pretty sure the radius of 0.75, the 1.5, is going to end up being truncated into the base of the part. Oh, 1.25. And then 1.5. Alright, so, oh, and then what I did, if we go to 1.12, actually that needs to be doubled. So let's make that a little bit easier. We'll go over to the liters, switch it to a radius, and there is the problem with it. So 1.12, and that should give me a diameter of 2.24. So we have that same dimension. I'm hesitant to make it tangent, even though that's where I pulled the number from. Right, and then it doesn't quite come across that way, so I think the backside then goes to the blend. Alright, so got some decent complexity there. Let's see, width-wise, what do we have for a step? Now at some point I'm going to get this to a level of complexity that it's not going to be worthwhile chasing it too much more. I was kind of looking at thickness here. So 0.75, but it doesn't give me a typical. So that would kind of be the assumption, is that the arc is going to stay 0.75 at least through that segment. So let's go ahead and offset, and we'll see what it, well, that's going to give me a little too much geometry on that one. Alright, and then that's going to come down to the blend anyway. So 0.75. I'm going to stay, let's go with the center point arc. Alright, so if I highlight and drag over that circle, that's going to give me the center point. Doesn't go the way that I want. So we're going to bring that back down to where it makes the intersection with the 1.88 line. Alright, so we still have some decent complexity there. So between the two arcs, then we can give it the 0.75. Alright, so still a little concerned with the internal geometry there, but let's go ahead and start building some shapes. Alright, so I'm going to leave this as a layout, and I'm not going to share it as a sketch. Alright, so rotating over, let's go with the base first, kind of this whole segment. So top plane. And I missed, so we'll just kind of drop it there. Put that at the origin. And if we can get a coincident, we'll let that drive. Alright, so 2-inch diameter, that's the outside. And then I'm going to go ahead and leave that solid. So the advantage of having the layout sketch is I'm going to drive as much geometry off of that as I can get. Okay, so this is going to be an up to vertex, and that gives me the first shape. Not too worried about solid bodies being generated here. So, and the radius coming back to that segment. Alright, so let's go ahead and if these were the same height, I would go ahead and include that in the same sketch. Since they're not, go back and pick up that center point. See if it'll let me come out to, kind of showed it briefly on the yellow, but it really didn't apply it. So there we have our coincidence. Feature extrude up to vertex. That'll get me my first base shape. Alright, because we're at the center and we haven't generated any geometry as of yet, We can kind of build that that first couple of shapes. All right, and we're given off of center line. Well, let's take a look. We're given off of center line 0.75 to the edge, 0.88 on the this would be the front. Okay, and then the bosses go through. So it's almost like we're going to have to do a little more geometry there to get that built out. Alright, so my sketch then is going to be on the right plane. I'm going to mirror this. So come over, up, and back, and then bring it to the center line. Okay, and then that is the 1.88, so if we make those coincident, that'll set the height. We have a 0.25, and our distance 0.688, 11/16. And then the web distance, I think we were still given 0.25 and 0.25. So just kind of rotating over, making sure that I have the diametral. Okay, we'll try that again, 0.25. And then window pick, mirror, and we'll go with the features extruding up to body. Alright, so that'll just bring it over to where it intersects. Okay, and finds the curvature. Alright, so I'm not too worried about this because once we kind of discern what's going on here, all of this is going to go away. So that being the case, let's go back to the top plane. And we'll do the same center line. And then I'm always kind of checking to reality check how bad am I painting myself into this corner. So the 1.188 was here. Okay, and I'm going to set that to vertical. Now this, if we're going to tie it to the geometry, I should be able to do something like that. Come along that edge, back to the center. If we go to the top view, looking down, then this is going to be coincident to that edge, and we're going to tie that web, at least in theory, back to the geometry. Alright, and then kind of just had the, oh, we don't need to close that off, it's not a revolve. Alright, so 0.25, and then we had the overall of 0.75. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and mirror. I missed the mirror line. Go ahead and include that. Control 7 to go to the isometric view, and then we want to bring this up until it intersects. So we'll probably end up with a little extra geometry to make sure that it goes all the way through. We'll see if we can, if we need to trim that later. Okay, so this is going to be an up to vertex. We'll bring it up to the intersection point. So since this sticks just outside of the arc, that is kind of a concern. Alright, so the other thing I just noticed is the 2.438 goes this way, but then the underside, alright, or the 2.813, the underside is the 2.438. So I have that little bit of geometry, but I don't have the sketch included yet. So that being the case, let's back up a little bit. I'm going to take the rollback bar and we'll go back to the body. Identify the front plane. We need a center line to revolve about. And I'll go into the rectangle looking for that silhouette edge or coincident to the intersection on the cylinder. We have a height of 0.25 on the lip. Let's see, on the base we should have about the same thing, 0.25. So if that works out okay, then I can find that silhouette edge, and it's not letting me pick the midpoint, or not giving me a midpoint. So let's see if I go midpoint, and then we'll see if we can find it. And if it lets me go midpoint to midpoint, that'll get it centered. And then the diameter for the cut revolve, the 2.438. Alright, so the features, revolve cut, 360 degrees. The test then is that when we roll this forward, does all of this intersect correctly and look like it like it's supposed to. Alright, so our next piece of geometry, we haven't quite tied that in just yet. So just kind of getting a sense of some of these things that are going to have to be filled if I'm building this out. Okay, and then that would be the other number that I grabbed was the 2.5. Right, the 2.5 between the centers of the little flanges off to the side, and in reality it's 3.625 as an overall. So let's catch that since it has come up. So 3.625. Go ahead and rebuild. Alright, so a little bit different, but still there. Alright, so this is where it's going to get a little interesting, is that these arcs, and where that's going to come back on the blend, I'm not quite sure, but we're going to give it a try. So since this is a true arc, not a spline or some more complex geometry, and just making sure that I'm looking at this correctly, then we're into the center line, infinite length, horizontal, and my 20-minute save just came up. So as complicated as this one is trying to be, I think that would be a real good idea. Alright, so I'm going to draw the web. It's not letting me recognize it, but I should be able to pick the end point of the arc. Throw a couple of dimensions on. Okay, so the 0.75, 0.25 for the web, or for the bottom, And then if I can make the projection, I'm going to pick that existing edge and make those collinear. Alright, so the challenge here is that out here somewhere we have a center point, and I need to use that center point as a revolve. Oh, yeah, and I guess it would be handy to go ahead and mirror this. Alright, so that gives me my geometry. Then the location, let's go ahead and do another center line. Might as well make it vertical infinite length. Alright, so can kind of identify that point. And in the current plane, I want that to be coincident. So when we look down at, whoops, got the Microsoft Play Store there. I don't think that was it. Alright, so through that segment, and once again, when we kind of hover over, then there is, and if we project that up, that gives me the center point. Alright, so when I go to revolve this, this is going to come up to that point, and make sure that we're in the revolve, and then we have an axis of revolution. I think 90 degrees is going to more than suffice. Let's reverse the direction. Alright, so actually, that's a little tall. Alright, so that was the one that we didn't quite make tangent. So, because I have shifted the plane, and really won't see that until after we pick that geometry, because the plane is not going through and my center line axis of rotation is above, we're actually getting a little more geometry than we need. Alright, so I'm going to rotate that back. Still need to find that center point, so I know it's in the sketch, I just have to kind of keep track of it. Alright, and so the top plane, we're going to create an offset plane at a point. Alright, so the point is the first reference, it's coincident, and then the top plane parallel to the top plane. Okay, so once I generate that geometry, then I can go back into Sketch 7, and we're going to edit the sketch plane and pull it off of the top and bring it to the intersection. Alright, so that looks pretty good. That actually brings it up intersecting into the geometry. Still doesn't quite bring it tangent though. So because we're on that endpoint, I want to say because we're on that endpoint and not at a pierce, yeah, let's go ahead and hide the plane. I'm going to edit the sketch, and then we made that coincident with something, so it's probably going to be coincident 1. So let's see what happens when we delete that. Alright, so that lets me move, and if I select that midpoint and the arc where it comes down through, then we want that. It doesn't like the pierce, so it doesn't come far enough down. So that doesn't give me a desired result. I'm going to go back into the layout, and if I continue with the center point arc, come out in that direction. That horizontal and accept it. That should, in theory, intersect my sketch, which now either have the endpoint and can make it coincident, or if we'd pick the curve, then it would be a pierce. Alright, let's see if that gives a better result. Alright, so that swings it through the arc. We have the geometry. A little bit of a blend issue right there. I think I'm going to leave that rather than trying to correct for the radius. That little fingernail doesn't bother me too much. if we were going to complete this out with the radius, this would be a problem. All right, so I can leave it at least temporarily until we get a fix. All right, so the radius actually kind of blends in here. So I got it to go all the way up, but then it transitions into this solid. So let's see what we can do to correct that. And also, since it's at 90 degrees, I kind of expect to have a little mismatch in there. So at the same time we're fixing that, we'll overrun it enough to create the geometry. All right, so I'm going to hide the layout real quick. We'll open up a sketch on the face. Okay, and I got a little bit, I'm going to have a little bit too much there, so let's take the coincident off that back edge, move it to the front edge. And I know that I'm going to have probably more than I need. So coincident, and actually for all practical purposes we could just go to the midpoint. It's far enough in. I was thinking, I could get a dimension in there, but let's go ahead and extrude it and see what it looks like. So if we bring that out to the vertex on the opposite side, that's kind of a fill and gives us a little transition element there, but I think we'll be able to live with that. Alright, so one piece I'm not quite so sure how I just noticed was that little triangle left in the interior. So one thing I would like to try then is to cut with surface. Alright, so if we insert a cut and I tell it to cut with surface, not going to be valid. I need a actual surface feature. So if I could pick that face, well, since I don't have the face, then we can just create a segment of the geometry and go ahead and complete the bend, since I'm actually ending up with a few more steps than I intended. Alright, so let's bring that up on the transition. And if we go with a tangent arc, nope, it's not going to like the end point of my geometry. Let's just stay with the 3-point then. Okay, need to actually place it a bit. Then we're going to make sure that it goes tangent. And if I can make that transition, alright, the other thing would be to make those equal. Okay, so tangent coming off of the arc. And for that matter, let's go ahead and make that a converted entity. Okay, did not want to go right to that point. Yeah, it lifts off a little bit. Oh, we have another step over there. So that's probably where picking up that extra geometry. Alright, so I've made that way too complicated. Alright, so let's bring it to that point. I don't think this step and this step are going to be the same. So pretty much what we'll get this in place, and then we'll have to resolve at least part of that step, since it's not a completely tangent smooth transition. Alright, got an open profile. Let's extrude cut through all both. Make sure that our side to cut is going to remove the extra material, and then that is the step that I need to deal with. Alright, so I want to move on with the geometry because I'm not overly concerned with the mass there, but we still have a ways to go on our geometry. Alright, so on the front plane, we'll open up the sketch, and we're going to pick up a rectangle, and I'm going to bring it back to that point. From the top, we're at 0.688, and not sure what I told it, but it was big. So we'll try that again. 11/16, 0.688. Must have missed the decimal. And then from the bottom, 1.688. And then when we cut that through, extruded cut, also through all both, interior removes. Okay, so that transition looks a little bit better. Alright, so other than a few minor details, I think we're pretty good on our geometry. So it would have been nice if this had come off tangent. Want to stay with that dimension at least for now. And since we're not given a center point, and bringing it back, yeah, it makes the connection, but then it doesn't when it passes through. So if the radius was all the way around, and if we had that 1/8 inch radius, that would probably close it off. Alright, so just doing kind of that double check as we go. Okay, so I'm going to show the layout again. And that looks a little bit bigger than I expected it on the blend. So kind of was thinking that full 1.06 radius would be part of the transition, but we're not really given a clear detail there. So alright, so looking at the detail around this, we're not, that 1.06 assumption that was the center, when, you know, really there's not a lot of clear detail there, so I think we're going to have to try lowering that boss because that transition is just so close going in there. So 1.25 divided by 2 would be 0.625 if we lower that down. So since we had our height plus the radius, then that should be the number. So 0.625. And then we'll rebuild. Alright, so that's a cleaner transition. It doesn't quite blend all of the way, but it's much cleaner than what we had before. Alright, and so that one was the 1.5, which is the interior relief. And so actually we're going to need at least one more sketch there. So we're sketching, or one more sketch circle. So 1.25. And that's just to kind of verify that that transition. Alright, so again, given the complexity, I think we made pretty decent progress. I'm going to go with another sketch on the base, so we'll hide that. And the partial bottom view, so if this is standard, then this face here should rotate down and be this face here. So the relief and the cut and the stack of dimensions is a little bit complicated. If we stay with the radius on the back side, well, we'll need that that location where the 0.75 comes down and goes tangent if it's going to have a straight edge relief there. So, opening a sketch on the bottom, and we're going to go ahead with a rectangle to get it started, and that can be at the midpoint, and we'll have 0.57. Okay, and then let's just do some offset lines. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and show that real quick. And I did not include a line. Oh, and then after all that, I didn't save the document, so living dangerously. Alright, so 13.17. And then this is the drill press bracket. Okay, so once we jumped out of that, go back in, locate that 1.25, find the quadrant, come down, that needs to be vertical. Go ahead and accept. That gives me another location to work from. We'll edit the sketch, and then that should be the terminating point. And midpoint or coincidence should do that. Alright, so the first cut, and then we're going to have a revolve up to the next step, and then would assume. And then there again, without the level of detail what's going on in the center, this radius may come all the way across, in which case we could just use the sketch and go back and forth. Or if it needed to be a revolve, and then go up and transition. Now I think opening the sketch on the front plane and then having it cut back and forth is going to be the better of the two options there. Alright, so Control-6 to get to the bottom view. Let's go ahead and just do some offsets. So we have an offset of 0.88, and the 0.57 looks like it is to the outside, and then the 0.063 is on the interior bit. There again, it's not real clear. So the line, no, I don't really want to select the chain. So that'll give me the 0.88. And then if we go to the offset again, 0.75. Okay, to the outside. And that pulls it to the intersection. And then coming back off that line, as if it wasn't complicated enough, is 0.375. So that's going to be a stopping distance, and then the boss continues. So let's just make a select, control select, and coincident. And 375 off of the base. And then we do have, alright, the 1.157 from the center line. Let's go ahead and put in a center line there. We'll see what we get. 1.65. Alright, so maybe the 0.88 looks like we're going to have some duplicate dimensions, or that's including the 0.06. It's really not that far off. That's only about 7,000, so that could be a rounding and a stack up. Alright, so I'm going to go with the driven, and to the outside is the 1.157. Got an extra 1 in there. Okay, and then the 872. The blend, and then so that one went to the outside, and then 375 back. Not exactly sure what they're trying to accomplish here. So let's make that one horizontal. Alright, so to the outside wall here, back to the center line, 0.781. And we're not given a distance between those two faces. So 0.75 and the 0.88 are still kind of questionable. Oh, let's come back over. We do have an overall distance of 2.188, so one of these has to stack up. Alright, so to the outside's 2.188. Alright, we'll do one more driven, and then reverse it. Alright, so one of these dimensions has to have priority. The 2-place dimension is probably more questionable than the 3-place, so I'm going to stay with the 3-place dimension. Alright, so that brings it out to the steps and the blends. And other than the bosses, I think we're in pretty good shape. Five, 7. Yep. I still want to see what's going on with that 0.57, and if it's part of the 063, so 1/8 of an inch would put that up at 690. Yeah, there's too much going on there to I think to catch all of it right now. So let's get some geometry started, and then we'll chase it a little bit further. All right, so back to the intersections. Alright, so the up and over, and then the blend and the back will be on the front plane. So let's just go with a convert. And we'll make sure that that goes coincident or horizontal. And then we want it to include on the extrude. Let's get the contours and regions first. We'll make sure we're interior and interior. That's a little hard to see with all of the extra geometry. Up to vertex, the first point. Up to vertex, to the second point, and that gives us our offset. That still seems kind of strange. Alright, and then the next boss, which was the tangency. So front plane. And then we can convert entities. This will also be an extrude, and this is going to be up to vertex. And I missed, so back to vertex, make sure I get the point. Direction 2, up to vertex, pick the next point, and that gives me the intersection. Alright. Alright, so some blends, and overall that's looking pretty good. So, that being the case, I think we're ready to start putting some holes in, and then we'll try and correct for some of these geometries. Alright, so on the bottom plane, or on the bottom of the part, top plane, we'll open up a sketch. I'm looking for the origin. And this through hole is 1.375 on the core. Well, and it is different on the bottom, so we'll do the 1.375 first. And then we'll come back and we'll pick up the 1.5. Alright, so if I go to the extrude cut, we can pick up the interior. I go to selected contours, make sure that I'm picking up the contour. This one can be a through all. And then we'll share the sketch. And this one's going to be an extruded cut. Through all, pick up the contour. No, not through all, up to next. We need it to stop at that next face. And we'll clear the selection, make sure that I'm picking the 1/2 inch. And that'll get it to 1.5 inches. Alright, then my geometry for the relief, back into the front plane. Now let's go ahead and convert. And then as far as where these are going to terminate, I'm just going to trace over top, and apparently I missed. So we'll take it off the 0.75, coincident, highlight the little box, delete, make sure that those come up tangent. And then this is going to be an extrude cut. We still have the sketch on the base. So up to vertex, and then up to vertex to set the depth. Alright, so yeah, some pretty complex geometry in there. So let's go ahead and hide the base. I think we have all of the bosses, and I'm feeling a lot better about not chasing the all of the radiuses and fillets at this point. So sketch for the 0.75, we'll convert. Features will be an extrude cut, and we'll go through all. Okay, so that makes the intersection. And then last, on this segment anyway, we have the through hole, but I am getting ahead of myself and trying to overlook some of the geometry, so Control minus there, and that will fly it in. So we still have the two little bosses on the end, and our boss at the center. Alright, so we can put those in on the front plane. And I think I want to do that just because of the potential going through the intersection. And we'll do that all of that before we put in the 1.75. So on the front plane then, I'm going to go with a rectangle. And because I haven't put the hole in yet, I'm going to be able to take advantage and that positive into a positive, not having any geometry there to worry about. And then we'll just window pick, Control C, and Control V. And if we make a few of those equal and collinear, and then I can switch those over to construction geometry if they weren't already. Double check for construction and for construction. Alright, so from the center, 2.063, since we already have that geometry, 2.063. The radius is 0.25. From center, and these are going to end up being two different sizes from center line. Okay, so the 0.44, the 3.344. And the bottom one is actually a little bit shorter, so we'll go back and we'll take the collinear off. 1.88. Alright, and then they are 2.5 between centers. And from the top, we have 0.63. And so that doesn't add up. Alright, so I can see that one blending in. And is that to the center mark or to the base? So it looks like I grabbed the wrong one. So let's try to drag this to the center mark. Alright, so by grabbing the handle and then making that that transition to the center mark, then all I have to do is change the dimension. That one takes a little bit of practice and can be a nuisance at points to get it to work. Alright, so I think I have those. Then the first one is an extruded. We're going to do mid-plane. We'll go 0.8. Now let's do the top one. We'll do 0.688. And then the selected contour region. Now we'll go contour. Okay, so that gives us the first. And then we'll come back and we'll extrude for the base. Clear the selections. Pick the lower contour. And mid-plane, and then that one becomes 0.88. Oh, and I missed the radius on that one too. Okay, so back into our sketch. So got ahead of myself with, let's see, we have the tangency, the radius of 0.25, somewhere I made those equal. Alright, so there's my equal. 0.188. Alright, so that's where they ended up with just that little bit of gap. Alright, to the centers, just doing a quick double check, 2.5 to the centers. And then 0.63 from the top. Yeah, I think we're okay. Alright, so we're down to the last couple pieces of geometry. So the front plane. We need the boss, and it is called out as 0.63, so 5/8 of an inch. It is 1 13/16 off of the bottom, so 813, and not quite. We're not quite on center. Well, not. Take that back. With the 3.625, we'd have to do the math. Alright, to the outside then, it's 0.25 off of, okay, so we're going to end up doing math. Alright, so the features, gotta get out of the dimension, feature, extrude, and that is the 2.438. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in as, with parentheses, divided by 2 gives me the radius, and plus 0.25 should give me the extension. Alright, so 1.469. And we're ready to put some more holes and geometry in. Alright, so since I'm on that shape, we'll go ahead and hit the S key. We're going to stay with the definition. Am I still in? Make sure I'm hitting, hole wizard, I went into the extrude. Alright, so it is a threaded hole. It is a 3/8 24. And, well, we're going to have an in condition that is up to next. But I already know, based on its position, and I didn't put the through hole in yet, that it's going to go all the way through the part. So that being the case, let's do the rollback. Come to the bottom, open up the sketch. This will be 1.75. Okay, did not quite get that that center, so we'll pick that up. Extrude cut will be through all. Alright, and don't really care that it finds the end geometry. And we'll go ahead and save the document since we got quite a bit of time invested in this one already. The through holes, 2 times 0.2, so that would be number 7 drill. Alright, so if we draw it in, we're just going to look for the centers. If this was at some point potentially going to be tapped or have some other type of geometry, then we would go ahead and use the hole wizard. 0.2, and then this is an extrude cut through all. Alright, so let's take a look and see what I'm missing. We have the 2 60,000ths bosses on the interior, and those were the 1.06, the 0.75, and then the 1 1/4 bosses 063 on the interior. And those are kind of crazy to have on the interior, so quick double check, make sure I'm not missing anything. Last one's going to be the 540. Alright, so there's the 1.25. There is the through hole. We're going to convert both of those entities. And rotating over, then I'm going to extrude. This is going to be 0.063. And brings it up just barely past the edge. So we may want to yeah, we're going to have that little bit of extra there, so I'm going to need to trim that one. Alright, convert entities. Alright, and then features, extrude, also a 0.063. Alright, so given that geometry, I'm going to go back and see if I can determine where that was generated at. So the cut extrude. If we do the rollback, get back to that point. Now, let's see if we can drag without issue. Alright, so get the roll back out of the way, cut extrude 5. Alright, so the bosses are in place. It didn't quite trim it back far enough though. So using those parent-child, if we can rearrange, then I can get that little bit of trim off of the edge. And 11 will need to go with 12 there to get it to smooth out. So that one's going to be a little bit of a challenge, or expected a little bit more of a challenge with it having a rebuild error somewhere in that mix. Alright, so I still can't say that I'm fond of that geometry. It works. There's not a lot of detail there. We're going to make some allowances for it and then figure it out. Oh, and then because we went at the smaller face, then I'm going to need to catch that cut extrude. Alright, so one of the things we could do is just edit the sketch plane, pull it from that face to the larger face. The other thing would be to edit the feature and tell it to go through all both. Alright, so hole 3/8 24. And we'll come back up and hide the layout. And on the top of the sketch for that 540, I need a location. And we want to watch out for those intersections. I don't know that we're not given any specific detail. 344 down, not seeing an angle anywhere. So we'll go with the 45 degrees. So it stays in that quadrant. And selecting the endpoint and the cylinder, go into the plane. And where you are coincident, tangent to the face. We make that a little bit bigger. And then S key into the hole wizard. We're going to stay with the tapped hole. I saw a 540, even though that is kind of an oddball size now. Not as common. I wouldn't go to a 632, but might go to a 440. Depends on what we're really expecting it to do. All right, and then the position will be on center line. So if we come over to the hide, show the temporary axes, the display settings, and come back to center. We'll give it 11/30 seconds, 0.344. And that'll set it on position. Just a quick double check that it got fully defined. No, there's still a minus sign, so I missed something. So select, control, select, and go coincident. Point goes black, then we're okay. I'm through with the sketch, I'm through with the plane, so I'm going to hide both of those. And then the 540 tap and the center line will let us do a circular pattern. We'll have 4 pieces, or 4 instances. Axis equals spacing. I think that gives us the geometry. Alright, so we have all the major geometry. I have a couple of still have a couple concerns with that gap and the transition that I would want to clean up. The radiuses, let's put in just a couple, and I think this one's probably going to end up being a face radius anyway. So we have 0.25 and a 0.25, and we'll kind of combine those up. Alright, and then the insides. Okay, that one goes to 0.5. Alright, the first one, let's see if we can add it in here and what it looks like. So that doesn't look too bad. It's still just a weird transition, all of those surfaces coming together. And then let's go ahead and see if it'll take it, because I am curious if it will fill, if the 0.124 will fill in there. And so we get the feature expert, I think, where that transition is. It's going to be a little too complicated, and so in that case I would probably open up the sketch, build a little filler tool, and go ahead and close it off. But I'm going to leave it so that we can get into the mask properties and into the other geometry. So let's see, we'll leave the sharps. I'm not going to chase all of those down. So just a couple of radiuses to see how it blends. But we have the geometry. So that being the case, we'll make sure it saves and come over to the material. Let's pick a what do we have in other metals? Well, titanium would be fun, but sure wouldn't want to tap that 540 with it. Probably not a plastic. Well, if we did a high density polyethylene, that would be an interesting choice. So PE, high density, and close. And we'll make sure that it saves. One quick rotation. Alright, so even with the gaps, I don't expect the mask properties in the center of mass to shift much. Since we weren't given an origin and I selected this, we're going to do the selection for a coordinate system. So over under evaluate, that's where we're going to pick up our mask properties. And so with it set, and let's switch it over to grams. That's going to be millimeters, grams, and seconds. So again, the CSWA will be in metric, so that pick those 0.001 grams per cubic millimeter. So 321 grams, and X of 101.265, 50.856, and Z, because of that little bit of offset and not quite all symmetrical, 0.194. Okay, going to a another coordinate system. Let's shift it to the top. Oh, and I need, in the sketch, need the line. Alright, so again, just a quick construction sketch. Normally I would rename so that I can keep track of what I'm telling it to do, but in this case we'll come back to it later after we get an answer. So Y, let's go ahead and reverse the Y direction. Alright, so coordinate system in place on the top of the boss. We'll evaluate, go into the mass properties. Should not see any change in the mass. And the 100 and, I guess it would help to, after doing that, make sure that we switch to the coordinate system. And then now our values have gone to 63. The minus 0.194 is still pretty much, it shifted because, no, we picked that up. And the minus 41.219. Alright, so in the Z direction, positive. Did I reverse it? I must have reversed it. Oh, No, we rotated it. Z rotated up, X and Y. So Y and Z changed on the orientations. Okay, so complicated piece. Work through the problems, through the visual. We'll build. I'll build the drawings and upload the details so that this has a little bit better drawing to work from and build from.